In today's Lightbox, we talk to Glen Keane, arguably one of the most accomplished and gifted character animators of our time, responsible for such modern Disney icons as Ariel, Aladdin, The Beast, Pocahontas, and Tarzan. In 2012, Keane left Disney to pursue other projects, his first work being a contribution to Google's Spotlight Stories, in the form of the immersive short Duet. Skwigly met up with Glen at this year's Bristol Encounters Festival to learn more.
Well, I've been at Disney for 38 years, and something inside of you, though, says, well, what would you do if you didn't have to do a film that really fit within the Disney walls? Would it be the same? What is it? And these questions were kind of bouncing around in my mind, and eventually I felt like I needed to leave. Well, this Duet is the first fruit that fell from the new tree here. Glen Keane Productions started and did it in conjunction with Google. They invited me up to Silicon Valley, their offices, and showed me a phone with a little screen on it. And I'm thinking, why am I interested in doing animation for this little screen when I've done animations all on the big screen? Then I looked closer, and it wasn't a screen, it was a window into a virtual world that when you look in, it just opens up to infinity. It's rather than the smallest screen, it's the biggest one you could possibly have. And that you are giving the audience the camera into this virtual world where they choose and follow. So, you know, they said, well, Regina Dugan, who runs a division, research division for Google, it's called ATAP. She said, what would you do with this? And I said, well, I immediately started picturing if I had two little babies and watched them grow, but they're like intended. These will eventually be a couple in life, and watch them grow, but they do it in a circle. So and you have a choice. You can follow one or the other. When the babies cross and they go off screen, usually that's a cut. In this case, you could follow her, keep going, or hey, I'll follow him, and you could keep doing that and watch them grow and they fall in love. We did this little story and we called it Duet. So I was thinking this, and I said, well, what do you want me to do? She said, we just want you to do something beautiful and emotional.
Of course, you took it to another level as well, because the computer guys asked you to do it 60 frames a second.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the 24, 6. Just how did you deal with that?
Well, after kind of having an emotional breakdown, well, the first thing that, they said, it was, it would really help us if you would draw at 60 frames per second, because that's how it's being projected on the phone. The screen is refreshing at 60 frames per second. Thinking, no, it would help you guys, but what about me? I've spent 38 years thinking in 24 frames per second timing. How do you transpose that to 60? I mean, 24 doesn't go into 60. No. And Max and Jenny and I would go home and we'd just be like, what in the world? How do you figure this out? And our brains would hurt by the end of the day. And then I realized, sometimes if you look back, you find the answer to how you're going to move forward, which is really the theme here at Encounters, is looking back to look forward. That's exactly what, in this case, I realized when I started at Disney, all the old guys had on their desks a metronome. And that was because 24 frames a second was just as bizarre as 60 was for me. And their way of dealing with it was a metronome. And that metronome, that's 24 drawings, that's 24 drawings, that's 24 drawings, that's 12 drawings. And I thought, oh, well, that's 60 drawings, that's 60 drawings, well, that's 30. And suddenly it was like, oh, I can deal with that. It just takes more drawings. More chances to express yourself is a better way to think of it rather than more labor.
Did you have to liaise a lot to get the angles right and the perspective?
Well, you still have the limitation. I mean, all creativity happens because there are limits on what you can do, which actually forces you to be creative. So we have the limits of a piece of paper that's this big. But when a tree is actually huge, how do you draw that?
Yeah.
And the way we did it was created a mosaic. I mean, a mosaic where these little squares were all branches, because I'm animating the characters climbing through the branch, and I just kept drawing on another sheet of paper, another sheet of paper, another sheet of paper. Eventually we had the entire floor covered in huge drawing of 2 trees, because she climbs a tree, he climbs a tree, and both trees cross. You probably thought it was just one. It's actually 2. And when they see each other, the audience sees both of them, but you can actually now go and explore the outer regions of this tree, and the music fades away, and if you hear it on the device, you hear just the sound of the wind and the leaves, and you can just explore. And then the characters are waiting for you to come back, and when you do, then she stands up and she walks across the branch to leap into a pond. He jumps off into some leaves and goes surfing, and she goes swimming, and eventually they connect again. You have that complete freedom to follow whichever character you want.
As a standalone film, Duets proved powerfully popular at festivals, received an Annie nomination, and been longlisted for an Oscar nomination. The interactive version seen here was released from Motorola devices in November, with a planned wider release in the new year.